Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Wahid, a PhD student at Oxford University and a medical doctor in the UK's National Health Service. If you haven't watched my videos previously, on this channel I like to talk about the systems, frameworks and gadgets that I use to find focus and overcome procrastination with ADHD. ADHD is a complex neurodevelopmental disorder resulting in a combination of non-specific symptoms of general inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity, and difficulties with self-control. Some of the lesser known symptoms of ADHD are to do with structural changes in the brains of ADHD patients that cause executive functioning deficits, including but not limited to issues with working memory, self-monitoring, task initiation and organization, as well as planning and prioritization and impulse control. Now, knowing this, it's not surprising that living with ADHD can make it impossibly hard to develop good habits and, more importantly, stick to them over a long period of time with limited or delayed gratification. Reading James Clear's Atomic Habits a few years ago when I was still at medical school was so powerful and just what I needed to chart a path towards becoming an academic clinician. As a final year PhD student at Oxford University, I recently revisited the book, and whilst it has since become cliche and synonymous with productivity YouTubers, I do believe there are practical and ADHD-friendly pieces of advice from the book that are not so esoteric and can actually be applied to get into building good habits and sticking with them over a long period of time. In this video, I'm going to share with you 5 pieces of advice from Atomic Habits that changed my life with ADHD and helped me develop good habits and put in the repetitions to work towards my goals in life. Let's get into it. 1. The power of combination. James Clear talks about the importance of rephrasing how you look at your life, your hobbies, and more broadly, your goals. You'll never become the best in one area, but by combining multiple hobbies or goals together, you might be able to become the best across a domain. For example, in my case, I'll never become the best medical doctor, and I've totally accepted that, and neither am I aiming to do that. But maybe I have a chance at becoming the best physician, academic, and YouTuber who helps people with systems and strategies to excel with ADHD, and who also so happens to be a British Muslim. With my ADHD, I find my focus levels can waver when I have to focus on one thing for a protracted period of time. I also tend to feel overwhelmed and not able to focus on anything effectively when I have too many things on my plate. The optimal zone for me is working on preferably 2 or a maximum of 3 things side by side. That way, I get all the benefits from being able to task switch when I'm bored and don't suffer from spreading myself too thin either. Currently, the things I'm readily focusing on at this stage in my life are my PhD and my YouTube channel. And this approach helps me work around my daily productivity peaks and troughs. I generally prefer writing up my PhD results across 4 Pomodoros in the morning, and this is compared to writing at any other time of the day. I don't like to generally work on my PhD work in the evenings unless I have to. But the opposite is true for my YouTube channel. I much prefer editing my videos in the evenings and tend to really enjoy it. And also it complements my PhD work really well. And this helps me relax and get in the hours and repetitions, as well as staying productive towards my goals and not burning out. As a doctor, I'm used to being a type 1 personality in all parts of my life, and this, alongside my perfectionism and ADHD, makes it hard to find contentment in my achievements and more generally my life. For far too long, I used to get myself down trying to be the top performing student at medical school and more recently at grad school. But reading James Clear's book, I realized perhaps I don't need to be the best medic after all, and instead can combine my passions. What if I can excel in them alongside becoming a good doctor? It's really helped in giving me perspective and helping me find what my very limited bandwidth should be focused on. It's quite easy to judge yourself against your university performance or your job, but by defining the kind of character you want to become that nobody else can replicate and which you have an unfair advantage towards, I find I'm a lot happier in myself and life more generally. 2. The paradox of quality. I've talked about the dangers of perfectionism and procrastination loop previously on my channel. ADHD makes it very hard to start a new task or pay attention to a task over a long period of time, especially when things aren't going to plan. It's a recipe for procrastination. Perfectionism, though, makes the whole ordeal far worse. It's a pretty unnatural feeling to try to complete your studies or work to a standard that's not your absolute best, but it's absolutely necessary. In Atomic Habits, James Clear taught me once and for all to give up trying to become a perfectionist with ADHD and instead focus on repetitions, to focus on quantity and then refine towards quality. James talks about the story of the photography professor at the University of Florida who conducted the quality versus quantity experiment. At the start of term, the professor split his class in two. The first group was tasked with submitting the best image, a single image, at the end of the semester to be marked on its quality, with a student that submits the best quality image attaining the highest mark. Now the second group, the quantity group, were examined on producing the highest quantity of images, with the top marks awarded to students who submitted the highest quantity of photos. The results really shocked the professor, who found that not only did the quantity group produce the highest quantity of photographs, as they were assigned to do, but they also produced the best quality of photographs. You could quite easily be forgiven to think the quality group would produce the best image, but the opposite in fact happened. Now mastery follows consistency, and this is why James Clear forces himself to write a new article twice a week on his website. Showing up and getting repetitions in matters far more than your goals. The goal is pretty irrelevant really, the repetitions are what actually matters. With my YouTube channel, I'm trying my very best to post regularly, once a week, which can be very difficult as a PhD student at Oxford. And sure, I want to reach and impact as many people with ADHD as I can, but I can't control this. I can't predict how useful my videos will be, but occasionally with enough repetitions, I can perhaps hit the sweet spot from time to time. Setting up a system to allow me to put in reps is so much more important than finding a goal that I want to attain. Goals don't matter after a while. They're just an outcome that you have pretty limited control over. Repetition is all that matters. Trying to be a perfectionist with ADHD is just unnecessary baggage, quite frankly, that you don't need. Focus on quantity. 3. The Seinfeld Strategy. Jerry Seinfeld is arguably one of the best comedians of all time. He put his success as a comedian down to one thing: writing. And he found early on in his career that the best way to become a great comedian was to come up with great jokes. And the best way to come up with great jokes was to write every single day, consistently. His consistency was down to his conviction to not break the chain. Every day he'd spend time writing jokes. He'd then put a cross down on a calendar, and his only focus was to never break the chain. Along the way to building a habit, it's very easy to miss a day or two and fall off the motivation train and stop being consistent. In the past, I'd get down about missing out on my habit and it'd entirely derail it. James mentions in his book, never miss twice. When you forget to do a habit, make sure you get back on track immediately. From time to time, we all have things going on in our lives and can miss out on our habits, but that doesn't have to be the end of what was a positive attempt. James Clear has taught me to be results agnostic with ADHD and to focus on just being consistent and getting repetitions in. Recently, I was busy with moving as well as getting my YouTube studio sorted. I missed out 2 videos back to back, which is something I never wanted to do. My goal from this year was to produce weekly content for 2023. James Clear's advice helped me to not judge myself too harshly and get back into it. I thought missing 2 weeks would totally screw up my ambitions with my YouTube channel, but to be honest, it had no effect on me really. In fact, this week I've been able to produce 2 extra videos to make up for it without much effort. And that's because of the Seinfeld strategy. I tried not to judge myself too harshly and not break the chain, to be results agnostic and focus on the repetitions. 4. Habit stacking and temptation bundling. Now, I'm always looking for practical strategies and systems that I can implement to help me make marginal gains with my ADHD. In his book, James shares 2 strategies to help solidify good habits and to make it easier to stick with them. The first is habit stacking, which is a great way of building on a new habit to an existing habit. A simple rule that I've created with studying is, as soon as I sit down on my desk to study, I make sure I take my multivitamins and drink water. I've been able to pair my habit of sitting at my desk, something I do every day, to building 2 important healthy habits. Whilst I'm working, I tend to use the Pomodoro method because over the long haul, I think I spend far more time studying and less time procrastinating when I have a set work interval and a rest interval. During my rest interval, I've been able to couple on the habit of performing my Salah, so I'm able to keep up with all my daily prayers and really solidify this. I've touched previously on how I've retained the habit of praying whilst I've been at Oxford in a previous video, so check it out for more tips if you're interested. Habit stacking has really optimized my workflow and my ability to maintain multiple habits with ADHD. Temptation bundling is another practical strategy which I've been using. James describes temptation bundling as a way of pairing an action that gives you instant gratification with one that's beneficial but has a delayed reward. With ADHD, we struggle with sticking to tasks over a long period of time with a delayed reward. So this strategy has been helpful. I've been able to couple having dinner with going for a long walk. I need to have dinner every evening, and it's something that gives me instant gratification. Going for a walk after dinner has helped my productivity massively. I'm far less bloated after eating and able to actually put my calories to use. It also gives me invaluable time with my thoughts and to really think about the things that are on my mind. The great positive I've seen with this recently is when I come back from my walk, I'm ready to do deep work right away and feel a lot better for it. Habit stacking and temptation bundling are productivity techniques which, albeit not developed by James Clear himself, I learned from reading Atomic Habits, and it's helped me with building and solidifying habits that are healthy and helpful and which I found difficulty with sticking to in the past. 5. Using the visibility method. Visual cues are a way to remind yourself of goals and habits. Especially with ADHD, when you find it hard to stick to things, where frequent reminders can go a long way. In Atomic Habits, James talks about the importance of the environment around you to influence the type of person you become and the habits you stick to. The key really is to cultivate a living environment around you that allows you to practice healthy habits and makes it harder to stick to unhealthy ones. The visibility method is all about optimizing and organizing the environment around you to make it easier to carry out good habits. For me, there's a few ways I've been using the visibility method to optimize healthy habits. Firstly, when I sleep, I always have my face mask and earbuds near my pillow so I can get deep sleep and make sure I wake up refreshed. When I wake up, I always have my floss next to my toothbrush, so I'm really encouraged to use it. And as I touched on, I have a big water bottle at my desk so I can take regular sips alongside my multivitamins. I also have a moisturizer sitting at my desk, so throughout my studying I can remember to moisturize my face and hands. I also talked in my last video about using the visibility method with my prayer, which in the past I'd struggle with making a habit with my ADHD. By having my prayer mat out always, I'm constantly reminded to pray and have reduced the barrier to praying consistently. Optimizing your environment with ADHD is a great way to reduce the friction to actually building good habits. Sticking to things long enough to see any meaningful results can be a challenge for most people, and this is especially true for people with ADHD, where we have deficits in executive function. Building healthy habits has required me to put in place strategies to A, make it easier for me to get reps in, and B, reduce the barrier to sticking to habits long enough to see meaningful results. James Clear's book was a resource that I needed to read at medical school to make sense of and navigate through my ADHD. I hope you benefited from the practical lessons I learned from James Clear's New York Times bestseller. If you learned even one thing, like this video and subscribe to my channel to stay up to date with more videos on the systems, frameworks and gadgets that I use to stay on top of my ADHD at university. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.